Usually when we talk about systems on this show, we are looking at like software infrastructure or maybe supply chains. But today we are doing a deep dive into a system that quite literally keeps the lights on for over 72 million people.
Yeah, that scale is just massive.
It is. I mean, Social Security is a giant ship. But looking at this stack of documents you brought in, specifically this Strategic Policy Analysis Report from February 2025, it really feels like the passengers on that ship are noticing the engine is making a terrible noise.
That is probably putting it mildly. The phrase that jumped right out at me from this report, and it is a pretty terrifying phrase for a dry policy document, is financial black hole.
The financial black hole. That does not sound like a slight dip in the market.
No, not at all. It describes this very specific economic zone where your purchasing power is just eroding faster than the government's mechanisms can actually fix it.
Okay, so that sets the mission for our deep dive today.
Yeah.
We need to figure out why, when the government says they are giving everyone a raise, it feels like people are actually taking a pay cut. I want to get into the exact numbers for 2026, but first, you have to explain this disconnect. What is the difference between the paper reality and the grocery store reality?
Well, it all comes down to the engine that drives that annual raise. I think everyone knows the acronym, COLA, the cost of living adjustment.
Right.
But very few people actually understand the metric used to calculate it. It is called the CPIW.
Okay, I have seen that acronym floating around, but what does the W actually stand for?
It stands for urban wage earners and clerical workers. And honestly, that right there is the fundamental flaw in the entire design.
Wait, hold on. Are you saying the metric they use to decide how much money a retired 80-year-old grandmother needs is based on the spending habits of a 25-year-old office worker in the city?
Precisely. That is exactly how it works. And think about what a working-age person spends their money on. They buy electronics, they buy work clothes, commuting costs, maybe a new car.
Yeah, and the prices on a lot of those things have actually been pretty stable, right? Or even dropping in some tech sectors.
Exactly. But what does a senior spend the vast bulk of their income on?
Healthcare, definitely.
Yeah.
Heating bills, food.
Right. And those specific categories are where inflation is the absolute stickiest. It just refuses to come down. So the government is basically measuring inflation using a basket of goods that looks absolutely nothing like the basket of goods a retiree is actually buying.
It's like measuring the temperature in Florida to decide if people in Alaska need winter coats.
That is a perfect analogy. And because of that massive mismatch, we get what the report calls this trailing indicator problem. The CLA looks backward. It basically reimburses you for the inflation a clerical worker experienced last year, not the inflation a senior is facing right now.
So you are constantly chasing the bus, but you never actually catch up to it.
And the gap between you and the bus just keeps getting wider. That is the black hole the report is talking about.
Well, let's look at the actual numbers then, because the report is very specific about the 2025 and 2026 projections. We saw a 2.5% increase kick in back in January 2025. And now, for 2026, the report confirms a CLA of 2.8%.
Which, if you are just looking at the percentage on paper, looks like a slight improvement. 2.8 is bigger than 2.5.
Sure, but percentages do not pay the rent. Dollars do. When you break down that 2.8% for the average beneficiary, what kind of actual money are we talking about?
We are talking about roughly $54 to $56 a month.
$56.
Roughly, yes.
Okay, I'm going to play the skeptic for a second. $56 is still better than $0. But the report puts that $56 up against some market data that is honestly just shocking.
It really is. The source highlights that in many regions, the price of a dozen eggs has literally tripled over the last 2 years. Rents, and I'm quoting the document directly here, have gone through the roof.
Okay, so let's do the grocery store reality math. If my rent went up $100 and my grocery bill is up $80 because of those eggs and everything else,
right,
and the government hands me $56.
You are mathematically poorer than you were the year before. You technically have more cash in your hand, but you can buy significantly less with it.
When?
That is compounding inflation. And the psychological toll of that is really heavy. The report explicitly mentions an erosion of trust in the safety net because people feel gaslit. They get this official letter saying, good news, you got a raise. And then they go to the grocery store and have to put items back on the shelf.
It creates a lot of desperation. And I think that desperation is exactly why the next topic in our stack is getting so much traction. I've seen this everywhere online lately, the Social Security Emergency Inflation Relief Act.
Yes, it has become a massive talking point, and it is directly responding to that failure of the CPIW we just broke down.
The headlines for this are incredibly flashy. They are promising $200 a month, which sounds like the cavalry finally coming over the hill.
It is a very bold proposal. The bill, which is sponsored by Senators Elizabeth Warren and Chuck Schumer, along with Representatives Stephen Horford and John Larson, proposes a flat $200 per month increase for beneficiaries.
Is that meant to be a permanent bump? Like, does the baseline just go up by $200 forever?
No, and that is a critical distinction that completely gets lost in the headlines. This is designed as an emergency relief window. It would last for exactly 6 months.
Okay, so $200 times 6 months, we are talking about a total value of $1,200.
Correct. It is essentially a targeted stimulus check, just distributed on a monthly basis. And the eligibility is broad. It covers retirees, SSDI for disability, SSI supplemental income, railroad retirees, and veterans.
Now, I spotted a detail in the fine print of this proposal that I think is actually really smart, specifically for the people who are struggling the most. Usually, if you hand an SSI recipient extra cash, the government turns right around and cuts their food stamps.
Yes, that is known as the benefits cliff. It is a huge problem in social policy, but the authors of this bill included a very specific provision. This extra $200 would not count as income for needs-tested programs.
So you wouldn't get the $200 and then suddenly lose your Medicaid or your SNE benefits because you crossed some arbitrary asset limit.
Exactly. It protects the floor while trying to temporarily raise the ceiling. It is a really crucial technical detail for anyone relying on those overlapping programs.
Okay, so on paper, this looks like a genuine lifeline. It addresses the inflation gap, it protects existing benefits, but when we talk about Washington, we need to look at the political geometry here. Is this thing actually going to become law?
This is where we have to be the bearers of very realistic news. The report analyzes the political feasibility of this bill, and it uses the phrase steep climb.
Steep climb. That is very polite policy code for do not hold your breath, isn't it?
Just look at the makeup of Congress right now. Both the House of Representatives and the Senate are controlled by the Republican Party. The sponsors of this bill, Warren, Schumer, they represent the leadership of the Democratic Party.
So in a divided government, the likelihood of the majority party passing a massive, expensive spending bill written by the minority party is
statistically very low. Look, it is not impossible, but it is highly unlikely. The report actually analyzes this bill more as a political message than an immediate legislative reality.
So it is a way for the sponsors to signal to the voters, we see your pain, and this is what we would do if we had the votes.
Exactly.
So for the listeners sitting at the kitchen table right now looking at a stack of unpaid bills,
do not build your budget around this $200, period.
Yeah.
It is a proposal. It is not a law. If you spend that money in your head before it is ever voted on, you are going to find yourself in a very deep financial hole.
Right. Do not spend the hope, spend the reality. But speaking of reality, there is another trap looming in 2026 that is not theoretical at all. It is definitely happening. And the report calls it the net versus gross trap.
Yeah, this is the one that really hurts people. It is what I call the Medicare swallow.
The swallow? That sounds incredibly ominous.
It is. See, the fundamental rule of professional financial analysis is to never look at the gross number. You only look at the net, what you actually get to keep. Most people look at their Social Security statement and they see that gross amount, the big number.
But you never actually get that big number.
No, you get the net, which is what is left after the deductions. And for the vast majority of seniors, the biggest deduction by far is Medicare Part B.
Which is automatically taken out of the check before it even hits your bank account. The government gives with one hand and takes with the other.
Correct. Now, we established earlier that the COA for 2026 is a confirmed 2.8%. But if you look at the healthcare inflation data in this report, Medicare Part B premiums are projected to rise by nearly 10% in 2026.
Wait, a 10% hike? That is more than triple the rate of the income increase.
Healthcare costs almost always outpace general inflation. So let's just play this out. Let's say your 2.8% COA gives you a raise of $50 a month. But then the Medicare premium jumps up by $50 a month.
You are right back to zero.
Or you are actually negative. You have technically received a raise on paper, but your bank deposit is exactly the same, or maybe even a few dollars less. The rising healthcare costs completely swallowed the entire COA increase.
Wow. And you can't exactly just say, no thanks, I think I will skip the premium hike this year.
Not if you want to keep your health insurance. It is mandatory. This is exactly why the expert analysis in the report advises so strongly to ignore the gross number. When you are planning for 2026, you absolutely must look at the net. If you start spending that 2.8% increase right now, you are going to be completely shocked when the January statement arrives and the extra money just isn't there.
It really feels like the system is squeezing people from both ends. You have the lagging CLA failing to cover the eggs and the rent on one side, and then you have the Medicare premiums eating up whatever pennies are left on the other side.
It is a total vice grip.
But the report does not just stop at next year. It zooms way out. And this is where the conversation shifts from feeling squeezed to something much more structural. We need to talk about the 2030s cliff.
Yes, the Board of Trustees report regarding the trust fund.
We hear about this every single election cycle. Someone is always yelling that Social Security is going bankrupt or that the money is entirely gone. Is that what this source material is actually saying? Because bankrupt implies the doors are locked and the whole thing shuts down.
And that is a really dangerous misconception. Nuance is absolutely vital here. The report confirms that the trust fund reserves, which you can just think of as the system savings account, are expected to completely deplete in the mid-2030s.
Okay, so the savings account hits zero. Does the system just stop?
No, the system shifts. Right now, we pay out benefits using incoming tax revenue plus a little bit from that savings account. When the savings run out, the system shifts entirely to a pay-as-you-go model, meaning it can only pay out what it currently collects in taxes from working people in real time.
But if there are not enough tax dollars coming in to cover 100% of the promises made to retirees,
then the payout has to drop to match the incoming revenue. It is a cash flow deficiency, not a total bankruptcy. The system does not disappear. But the report estimates that benefits would automatically drop to roughly 77 to 83% of promised levels.
okay, so let's be crystal clear about what that actually means. It is not that the checks stop coming.
Yeah.
It is that everyone, regardless of their individual need, takes a mandatory across-the-board pay cut.
Exactly.
And we're talking about a 17 to 23% income gap.
Okay.
For someone living entirely on that check, losing 20% of their income overnight is just catastrophic.
It is.
Does the report offer any actual strategy for this? Because the mid-2030s are getting closer every single day. What is the listener supposed to do with that terrifying piece of information?
The analysis suggests a very fundamental shift in mindset, which is incredibly painful but completely necessary. It says we have to stop treating Social Security as the sole source of survival and start treating it purely as a supplement.
Which is really easy to say for a financial planner writing a report. But if you are already retired and living on a fixed income, you can't exactly go out and start a hedge fund to make up the difference.
It is incredibly difficult for current retirees. But for those who are still working or anyone who has any asset flexibility at all, the actionable advice from the source is to treat that gap as a certainty. They recommend aiming for an emergency fund that covers 3 to 6 months of living expenses, and specifically to diversify your income sources right now.
Basically, you need to build your own personal buffer to absorb that potential 20% hit.
Yes, the message is clear. Do not rely on Congress to fix the hole in the bucket before the deadline. Assume the cut is coming and try your hardest to build a life that can survive it.
Because information really is your best defense here. If you know the cut might happen, you can try to restructure your expenses so it does not completely break you. If you just ignore it, you are going to be blindsided. Speaking of being blindsided, we have to pivot and touch on the immediate threats. Because whenever there is big news circulating, like high inflation or this shiny new $200 relief bill proposal, the sharks immediately start circling.
Oh, absolutely. Scammers love confusion, and they really love hope. Those are their two favorite tools to exploit.
So what are they doing this time? What is the specific play the report warns about?
They are directly pivoting off the headlines we discussed earlier. They know people have seen the news about the $200 emergency inflation relief, so scammers are actively calling or texting seniors, claiming that to activate or deposit this new money, they just need to update their bank information immediately.
They create that false sense of urgency. If I don't give this guy my routing number right now, I'm going to lose out on my $200.
Exactly. And that urgency is the biggest red flag. We need to be crystal clear with everyone listening. The Social Security Administration never works like that. They do not call you abruptly out of the blue. They do not send you text messages asking for your financial info.
So if you get a text saying, click this link to claim your inflation relief, or a phone call from someone saying they are from the SSA and they just need to quickly update your file.
Hang up the phone. Delete the text message. It is a scam. 100% of the time, legitimate changes to your account only happen via official government mail or through your secure portal at the official ssa.gov website. If someone is pressuring you on the phone, they are just trying to steal from you.
Okay, that is crucial. Let's pivot to the things you actually can rely on, the calendar. For our listeners who are living check to check, knowing exactly when the money lands is the only way to keep the lights on, the report outlines the specific payment schedule for February 2026.
And it is really important to note that these dates are locked in. They do not change based on pending relief bills or political arguments in Washington. You can circle these dates on your fridge right now.
All right, let's run through them for everyone, starting with SSI recipients.
SSI is always paid on the first of the month, so that is February 1st, 2026. Now, if the first happens to fall on a weekend or a holiday, it just bumps to the previous business day. But generally, plan your life around the first.
Got it. And for standard Social Security benefits, it follows that Wednesday cycle based on your birth date, right?
Right. So if your birthday falls between the 1st and the 10th of any given month, your pay date will be February 11th, 2026.
Okay, that is group 1. And if you are in the middle of the month, birth dates from the 11th through the 20th.
You are the second wave. Your payment lands on February 18th, 2026.
And the final group, birthdays from the 21st to the 31st.
You are the last Wednesday, February 25th, 2026.
Okay, so that is February 11th, February 18th, and February 25th. Mark them down. No matter what the news says about government shutdowns or debt ceilings, those are the dates the Treasury actually releases the funds.
Consistency is key when you are managing a tight budget. You cannot budget your life on a maybe. You have to budget on a definitely.
We have covered a massive amount of ground here today. We started with the financial black hole, where the COLA just cannot keep up with the grocery store realities. We looked at the political steep climb of the $200 relief bill.
The Medicare swallow eating up the entire 2026 raise.
And that massive looming long-term cliff in the 2030s. It is a very heavy picture.
It is. But if we try to synthesize all of this, the main takeaway from the source material is really about managing your expectations. We have a confirmed 2.8% increase battling against 10% healthcare inflation and tripled food costs. The math is undeniably tight. You have to be realistic about what is coming.
It really highlights the vital need for critical thinking right now. You have to be able to distinguish between a proposed bill, which is just political hope, and an actual law, which is financial reality.
And always focus on the net number, not the gross. The gross number is just paper. The net is the number that actually pays your electric bill.
Absolutely. I want to leave you with a thought today to mull over on your own. We spent a lot of time talking about how the system is shifting, both mechanically and financially, from a guaranteed full payout to a potential 80% payout in the next decade. If the American safety net is slowly shrinking into just a basic supplement, how does that fundamentally change the way the next generation, and even the current one, must view their relationship with the government? Is the social contract slowly being rewritten without us really even noticing?
That is the defining question of the decade. And how we answer it might just determine how we all survive the next 20 years.
Something to think about the next time you are checking those egg prices at the store. Thanks for joining us at this deep dive. Stay informed and stay safe out there.
Goodbye, everyone.